So, Michael, let's start with you and this really interesting piece that you wrote a few weeks ago, looking at these extra kind of treats and bonuses and offers which exist for people who are on benefits. I know that the benefits issue in general is something we can get into, but just on your piece, what did you find out? And do you think many people were aware that this kind of thing was going on?
So it's a funny old piece because what it's about is something that's not new at all. And actually, when we put the piece up, my editor Michael Gove did this very kind tweet, and he was like, "Oh, this is great investigative journalism." And someone not unfairly pointed out, "How is this investigative journalism? He's just done some Googling." And that is completely true.
That counts, I think.
Because what we've done is we looked at some of the most expensive tourist attractions in London. So things like London Zoo, the Tower of London, Cutty Sark, places like that. London Zoo, for example, for a family of 4 to get in, it's £111. But what all of these places do is they offer concessions, but they also offer discounts for anyone who's on universal credit or various other benefits, and some of the differences are quite stark. So Tower of London, that £111 example, if you're on UC, the same family is just £1 ahead, so it's £4. And again, this is not a new thing, but it's one of these things where the story is not a story until it becomes a story. So the piece is a lot more about, the incentives and the benefits system. But we did this graphic just comparing these discounts. And we put that out there and it went mad. And I think the reason there was such a reaction to it is, as I keep saying, not because this is a new thing, but because people are more aware than ever in this sort of this broken incentive structure that we now seem to have in the wider economy, where the state will protect almost anyone apart from people in sort of low paid or even average work. And I think that's why it's become a story now, because people are, just feel that this is unfair.
And I suppose the pushback that you would naturally receive is this really that much of a problem? The fact that people who might not have a hell of a lot be able to go to one of these attractions inexpensively. But I get that you say that it kind of points to the wider injustice, but what would you say to those people that this is a kind of no big deal?
I think they're right. And again, this is the point that if you looked at discounts like these, 10 or 15 years ago, I think most people, unless you're like a total Scrooge, would be like, that's fair enough. If you really don't have a lot of money, or if you've got some horrendous disability and it costs you loads to, travel around anyway, then you should be getting these discounts. But it's because of what's happened since COVID, right? It's that claims for universal credit, claims for disability benefits have exploded because of things like mental health. And I think the volume of what's being used now is why it's not so much fair anymore. And these things are not well policed. I mean, you just have to show that you can get into the UC portal from any of these places. And we didn't put this in the piece, but I know of examples of a flat share where 3 people in the flat were in, standard like middle class jobs. One was a lawyer, I can't remember what the other 2 do, but, above average earning jobs. And one of their flatmates was unemployed and on universal credit. And all 4 of them got into the Tower of London for £1. So part of it is, just abuse of literally the discounts. But I think it's a wider issue of, it just draws attention to how out of control our benefit claimant counts. And our benefit claimant count has got. And the other key difference here is on what you can earn, because when universal credit came in, and I say this in the piece, the actual base payment you get, I think it's just over £400, is not a lot at all by international standards. Universal credit is not actually a generous benefit system. But when it becomes really generous is when you can get all these top-ups, when you can add things like incapacity, when you can add PIP, when you can add the various aspects of child benefit. That's when you can earn actually quite a lot of money on these benefits. And so the benefit system goes from being one of the least generous in Europe to one of the most generous in Europe. And again, that's something that I'm sure 10 years ago, most people would not object to. Why shouldn't unemployed, disabled people get more money? But the issue since COVID is we've changed the definition of disabled. Disabled used to classically mean that perhaps you had mobility issues, you had a wheelchair, something like that. Now it means you've got anxiety or depression. And I think that's why this is now kind of getting people's gears.